even remember all of this happening.
Chicago police were called, but by the time officers arrived, the attackers were gone. The damage, physical and emotional, is not.
Because my head was so sore, I couldn't touch it to take out my hair. And then I have more back here.
Drew has worked at this location for 2 years. She's been off the job for a week, trying to process what happened, and says Chili's needs to add security.
I just want to know, how will they move forward? How will they fix that? How will they avoid that happening again?
We reached out to Chili's for a comment, and so far, we haven't heard back. As for Drew, she's bruised but not broken.
At no point did I threaten anyone. At no point did I say that I was going to do anything. I was quiet. They could have just left, but they came. They all decided to come back in and attack me.
And says she did nothing wrong and wants J Party of 6 to be arrested and charged.
I can't believe that something like this happened to me, because if you ask anybody, I'm nice.
Boy. So we got to talk about some fatigue stories that are going viral involving a couple of restaurants that had the pleasant experience of dealing with the EBT community, okay? Because apparently the economy is so bad that the EBT community can't afford to go out and eat, right? I think that we'll know the economy is actually really bad when the EBT community is not out eating, right? When they're not out at these fancy restaurants, then you'll know, right? You'll know when we're actually in a recession. But until then, I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of skeptical, because I can't lie to you. You know, when I go out to eat, which is not that much, right? But when I do go out to eat at a nice place, you know, I see the EBT community out, and I'm like, hey, you know, the economy can't be that bad, right? So I want to talk about a few stories here involving the EBT community. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this.
Common courtesy from a greeter inside this Chili's is what set this entire incident in motion.
They're hitting me in my head, they're hitting me in my body, they're hitting me everywhere.
It started last week when a group known only as J Party of 6 didn't like the wait time.
Get sad, I said it's gonna be another 30 minutes. They were upset, they started yelling, they were like 30 minutes and like just being aggressive.
As they walked out, Brianna Drew said the same line she gives every customer.
They decided they were going to leave. I was like, all right, you all enjoy the rest of your day. And they assumed that I was being sarcastic and trying to like play with them. But I was just, that's brand standard.
But Fox Chicago obtained video showing what happened next. A brutal beating inside the Chili's at Marshville Plaza, located in the 1700 block of West 109.
Yeah, so I want you guys to understand. This woman, who is simply a greeter, told this group of lovely individuals that it's going to be 30 minutes. Okay, we gotta wait. The restaurant's full. Apparently, these astronauts did not accept no for an answer, right? They thought that the woman was being rude, and regardless of what the woman said or how she said it, I'm not entirely sure how you could justify jumping a woman, the greeter, simply because you couldn't get your way. But the unfortunate reality is, we see this all the time from low IQ people, which is a lack of impulse control, right? They can't control their anger, okay? And they decide to take their anger out on innocent people simply for being told no, right? Because they can't get their way. And this is what happens when there's no consequences for these type of actions. I'm pretty sure this is not the first time these individuals have jumped somebody because they can't get their way. The problem is that they're never punished, okay? And yeah, that is what we have here.
19th Street.
The rest of her party, they came rushing back in the restaurant, and they all kind of just attacked me.
The 19-year-old single mother was first hit by a woman, and then a man joined in.
What do you see when you look at this?
Chaos. It was a lot. I don't even remember all of this happening.
Chicago police were called, but by the time officers arrived, the attackers were gone. The damage, physical and emotional, is not.
Because my head was so sore, I couldn't touch it to take out my hair. And then I have more back here.
Wow.
Drew has worked at this location for 2 years. She's been off the job for a week, trying to process what happened, and says Chili's needs to add security.
I just want to know, how will they move forward? How will they fix that? How will they avoid that happening again?
We reached out to Chili's for a comment, and so far, we haven't heard back. As for Drew, she's bruised but not broken.
At no point did I threaten anyone. At no point did I say that I was going to do anything. I was quiet. They could have just left, but they came. They all decided to come back in and attack me.
And says she did nothing wrong and wants J Party of 6 to be arrested And
now look at all these individuals. Look at all these individuals. Now, again, you know, as a black conservative, I've never jumped a black person, right? I've never hurt a black person outside of self-defense, okay? I've never stole from a black person. I've never done anything like this to a black person, but I'm always called a sellout and, this, that, and the other, right? But this stuff happens all the time to other black people, right? Suffering at the hands of black folks. And none of these people are called sellouts, right? None of these people are called race traitors. None of these people are told you hate your mama, you hate your sister, you hate your aunts, you hate your daddy, right? You hate yourselves. They're never told that, right? They're never ostracized from the community. And that's the problem. That's the biggest problem. These individuals who are agents of chaos, who do stuff like this all the time, they are never punished by the community. Never. They're never held accountable. And again, the most concerning part about it is that ultimately nobody's surprised by this, right? Nobody's surprised. They're like, oh yeah, this is just what happens. But who knows, right? Maybe this woman took one for the team, right? For the restaurant, because what these people had paid, right? These are the type of people that would have came in, ate, ordered $500, $600 worth of food, drinks, and then they would have left. They certainly wasn't going to leave a tip, right? They definitely wasn't going to tip. And so, who knows, right? Who knows? Maybe she took one for the team, right? She took one for the restaurant. She saved the restaurant some money. But to answer her question, in regards to what you do about it, discrimination, right? Discrimination is the answer, apparently, which is going to lead me to the next story that we're going to talk about here first. But I want to finish this video. But yeah, discrimination is what some of these restaurants, this is what they are embracing in order to avoid this type of stuff. We're going to get into it, but let me finish this.
Charged.
I can't believe it's something like this happens to me, because if you ask anybody, I'm nice. Everybody says I'm nice. The regulars, they love me.
As for Brianna Drew, she says that Chili's is conducting their own investigation, and Chicago police are too. From Morgan Park, Tia Ewing, Fox 32 Chicago.
Likely nothing's going to happen. But like I said, what restaurants are doing in order to avoid this, right, is that they're now embracing flat out discrimination. They say, you know what, we don't want your kind around here because we know what you do, right? And again, this is the reality of what people are going to have to start facing if black folks don't start to shun and to socially ostracize individuals who participate in this type of behavior. If this is something that we continue to just accept, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to lead to stories like this. This is another story that went viral. This is not in Chicago. This is actually in Chesapeake, Virginia. There were a group of black women, 9, that went out to eat at some fancy restaurant. And another group of black women who were there got in a fight. And then as a result, basically all the black women got kicked out of the restaurant, even the ones who were not involved in the fight, at least according to their story, right? And I want to react to it because, again, this story is going viral because of racism, hate, and bigotry. But I just think that this is an example of, again, what happens when you have the same pattern of behavior happen over and over and over again in these restaurants. The owners of these businesses, they're getting tired of it, right? They get tired and they're getting fatigued. This is what happens. You get this type of stuff. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Well, tonight, the Chesapeake NAACP and the Virginia State Conference NAACP are demanding answers after a fight in a Chesapeake restaurant. 9 African-American women say restaurant staff discriminated against them over the incident, even though they were not involved. The women say they want to raise awareness and are considering legal action. Layla Cox joins us now. And Layla, you've been speaking with these women and their attorney for the past 2 weeks.
That's right, Janet. Shakoya Somerville Holt told me this morning she and her friends are hanging in there and will do what it takes to bring awareness to an unfortunate incident so it doesn't happen to anyone else.
And as we got up to leave, it felt like we were doing the walk of shame.
Shakoya Somerville Holt says what started as a Friendsgiving celebration turned ugly very quick.
We didn't even get our drinks, and a physical altercation happened between 2 African-American women. We did not know them. We were not affiliated with them.
A video obtained by 13 News Now shows the fight between the 2 women at Cork and Bull, but what it doesn't show is what transpired afterwards. That is gaining a lot of attention online. The 9.
Look at these women. I mean, they ain't got no clothes on, or they're dressed so inappropriately, especially for a restaurant like this, that the news had to blur it out, right? And every single time these individuals get in a fight, the clothes are coming off, right? It's like watching a strip show. But you see this so often. I mean, I just a few weeks ago, I went out, me and my girlfriend, to Ruth Chris. I'm pretty sure you guys are familiar with that restaurant. Pretty decent, nice, steakhouse, right? And we walked in, and there were a lot of individuals in the restaurant that clearly were a part of the EBT community. And I'm not talking about upstanding, high class black folks. So I just want to make it clear, because I know some people will be triggered right in the comment section. I'm just making clear, I'm not talking about upstanding, high class black people that know how to adhere to the dress code and to present themselves in public at certain places, at upscale restaurants. That's not what I'm talking about at all. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. But this particular Saturday night at Ruth Chris, the individuals, they were not abiding by the dress code. Okay, you had a lot of them who were very large, with no clothes on, smelling like weed, loud, arguing with the waiter, right? And I'm in Ruth Chris, right? I'm like, man, I came here to get away from this, right? If I wanted this experience, I would have went to another place, right? I would have went to another tier of a steakhouse, right? I'm not gonna name no names, right? I don't want nobody to get offended. I'm just saying I would have went to another tier, not this tier. I came to this tier to avoid this, right? So I was very disappointed. Me and my girlfriend sitting there, we are extremely disappointed because we're sitting in the middle of it, right? We're sitting in the middle of it, surrounded by, again, individuals smelling like weed, dressed inappropriately, cleavage out, butt out. Again, these are plus size individuals, loud, trying to get in a fight with the waiter, right? Over something crazy. Okay. Just all around embarrassing. And I had to tell the waiter or the waitress, right? I had to say, listen, the food here is great, but the atmosphere is just not good. I don't know if I'm gonna come back. Not to this one, because your atmosphere is not it's not pleasant, right? Not what I'm looking for. And that's just the reality of the situation. I try to get away from that, but I'm like, how in the world in this economy, right, that's allegedly supposed to be so terrible, right? People struggling so much, right? This is what I hear all the time on the internet, right? I'm like, how is this possible? How are all these people eating out at a place like this, right? So casually. So, I'm just saying, everybody's had this type of experience. And you see it everywhere. You can't avoid it. Even when you go to the super nice places to get away from it, they're there. Right? It's a problem. That's a problem. I'm just saying. This is something I personally have experienced.
And women dining at Cork and Bull were told by management they had to leave immediately.
I questioned, are you shutting the entire restaurant down for tonight? No, we're just not servicing you all because y'all like to fight.
Mrs. Holt says no other parties were asked to leave, and when law enforcement arrived shortly after the woman that fought left, Cork and Bull management asked Mrs. Holt to take responsibility.
The other two women, they were already gone by the time law enforcement arrived. So the manager asked me to give a statement. We wasn't involved in this.
2 weeks later, the group of African-American women say they are still embarrassed, shocked, and confused, but at the same time grateful for the outpouring support from the community. The Chesapeake and Virginia State Conference NAACP chapters are standing united with Mrs. Holt and her friends.
This is what we do. When we see cases of racism, when we see cases of injustice anywhere and everywhere, we call it out and then work to rectify the situation.
Now, again, this is the problem with the NAACP. This is the problem, okay? They always boo-hoo, whine, and cry racism, and they want to correct bad behavior when it comes to racism, right, or perceived racism. But they don't want to correct bad behavior when it comes to what led to those individuals getting kicked out in the first place. Now, I don't necessarily agree with the restaurant kicking out those black women that didn't have anything to do with it, allegedly. And that's what I'm saying allegedly, because we don't really know the restaurant side of the story, right? All we know is what these women said. We know how most of the time these people exaggerate, they leave out key details. So I'm just saying, I got questions, right? I got questions about their story and whether or not they were actually involved, because sometimes, you know, it can be something is like cheering it on, right? Making a whole bunch of noise while it's happening, right? I don't know, right? We really don't know to what extent they were involved. We just know their side of the story. But it's just funny how when the NAACP gets involved in stuff like this, they never have anything to say about the fact that you have black women in what is supposed to be an upscale, fancy restaurant where you're supposed to go to get away from like the buffoonery, right? The ghetto behavior. How they're in there fighting. You don't have anything to say about that, right? You don't want to address that. You don't want to address the bad behavior, but you want to address the restaurant trying to save their brand, because that's what they're trying to do, right? Because I just told you guys a story about when I went there, Ruth Chris. I told the waitress, I said, listen, this atmosphere, I'm not sure. I like the food, but the atmosphere is something where I'm like, I'm just gonna avoid coming here. You know, like, if these are the type of people that are dining at this restaurant. It is what it is. It is what it is, you know? But I get where the restaurant's coming from. I'm not saying it's right what they did, right? If the woman's story, if the story that these women are telling, if this story is correct, then, you know, I don't necessarily agree with them being kicked out, but I get where the restaurant's coming from. But I don't necessarily agree with it, but I get where they're coming from.
Virginia NAACP President Cozy Bailey tells 13 News Now Cork and Bull must apologize to the group of women removed and conduct internal practices with their staff that are non-discriminatory. Layla Cox, 13 News Now.
And 13 News Now has reached out to Cork and Bull Chop House management several times over the past 2 weeks and have yet to hear back.
Yeah, so, hey, who knows, right? Who knows? Again, I kind of get it. I get it from my own experiences. I get why they say, you know, we just get rid of all y'all. All y'all like to fight. We're not taking any chances. You go, right? And so I know some people probably like, oh, so here you go. He's selling out. What if that would have happened to him? Well, if that would have happened to me, I would have been like, well, hey, you know, it is what it is, right? I mean, I get where they're coming from a business perspective. Our people, we need to behave. We got to tighten up, right? If you don't want these stereotypes, if you don't want to be getting kicked out for being remotely associated with ghetto behavior, right? Then, you know, we got to call this stuff out, man. It can't be tolerated. From a cultural perspective, it cannot be tolerated. These individuals have to be ostracized from the community. That's the only solution. There has to be social consequences and repercussions for individuals who act like this, who embarrass us, who reinforce stereotypes, right? In public. That's the only way it's going to change. Because all these other folks, the whites, the Asians, the Hispanics, the Latinos, right? They don't tolerate this, right? These type of individuals that create these stereotypes that embarrass them, they don't tolerate this type of stuff, right? And I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm not saying it never happens, but let's just keep it 100. There's a pattern. There's a clear pattern of behavior that you see from certain individuals, a certain demographic of individuals that is happening in these restaurants, in public spaces, airports, malls, wherever, right? Parks, right? Wherever. It's happening, and it's a certain pattern. And you see it over and over and over again. And to deny it and to try to pretend, oh, you're racist, you're selling out. If you call it out, it's just, you're not helping it. You're just excusing the behavior, and then you see it more and more and more, and then you want to boo-hoo on and cry, oh, they discriminated against us. Oh, they kicked out all the black women. Oh, well, hey, we continue to tolerate it. You can't tolerate behavior. You have to call it out for what it is. There have to be social consequences for this stuff, right? And the culture has to change. But until then, this is what's going to happen. The fatigue is growing. Fatigue is growing, right? That's what's happening. A lot of people saying, wait, we're done with it. We're just not going to put up with this stuff. You're not going to ruin our restaurant. You're not going to ruin our brand. What we work hard to build, because you want to come here and act a fool. And I don't blame the restaurant. I don't blame the restaurant for saying we're going to make sure we don't have any more problems tonight, right? So, hey, I don't blame them. I don't necessarily agree, right? I don't think it's necessarily right, but I get it. I understand where they're coming from. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.